Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. Today's guest is R. Karl Hebenstreit. I can't wait to tell you why he uses that R in his name, and he'll share that during our conversation. But let me tell you a bit about him before we get started. Karl Hebenstreit is the founder and CEO of Perform and Function LLC. He is an author, an international speaker, an executive coach, and a human resources organization development leader with over 25 years of experience in biotechnology, healthcare, telecommunications, high-tech, pharmaceuticals, and real estate services. He specializes in executive coaching and leadership team organization development consulting. He relies on the Enneagram for client breakthroughs and successes. He is known for his high-energy, systems-thinking approach. Karl excels in building relationships, fostering collaboration, and guiding individuals to unlock their potential. He has held roles in major organizations, including Merck, AT&T, Genentech, and he coaches clients from individual contributors to C-suite executives on topics like emotional intelligence, strategic thinking, and team building. He is the author of The How and Why, Taking Care of Business with the Enneagram, Nina and the Really Tough Decision, and his latest book, Explicit Expectations, the essential guide and toolkit of management fundamentals, which is also now an AI-enabled training course. So without any further ado, let me welcome our good friend and yours, Karl Hebenstreit. How are you, Karl?
Thank you, Dan, for that amazing introduction. I am well. How are you doing?
I am great. You know, it's always so fun to talk to leaders like yourself who are making the world a better place by helping leaders be better leaders through the power of self-awareness.
Thank
And
you. I agree.
yeah, and you know, one of the things that's really cool, you've got a great background. You've worked at some major companies. You've probably seen it all. I love that you use the Enneagram. You know, here at Why Not Leadership, we lead with the YOS discovery, which is very similar to the Enneagram because there are 9 Ys and there are 9 categories in the Enneagram. So
Right.
I definitely want to dig into that a little more because you've now experienced the YOS discovery. And, you know, some of my audience are fellow coaches who are either YOS certified and some are Enneagram certified. So we'll dig into some of that. You've got 3 books under your belt, which is pretty cool. I definitely want to hear a bit about every one of those books because I know every book tells a story and they're probably different portions of your life and your professional development. So anything I missed in that introduction, Karl?
No, you pretty much have it all. You covered it all. There's been a lot of evolution and growth and development throughout my entire journey of organization development, starting off from human resources, of course. And I think that the books are pretty much a way of showing that growth and development of how it all made sense to me, how it started making sense to me, and how it continues to make even more clear and maybe even more succinct sense as I'm getting more engaged and advanced and involved in really seeing the power of the Enneagram and how it can be applied to virtually every single situation.
Well, one of the things we talked about it in the pre-show, Karl, is the fact that you know, you believe in the importance of self-awareness.
Yes.
I truly believe self-awareness is the number one step every leader needs to have. You've got to understand yourself before you can understand the others around you. So understanding our strengths and the challenges that come with those strengths, right? So a great leader knows their strengths, but they also know some of the challenges that come with those strengths. What's self-awareness mean to you?
I think it's exactly that. It's identifying what your strengths really are. So some people, and you see this with 360-degree feedback surveys. When 360-degree feedback surveys get done, people think of themselves and say, these are my strengths, but other people may surprise them by saying, well, these are these other things that we think you're particularly strong in and that we value you for. And some of them may align with what the person's self-awareness is, and others may not. And then when the person has asked about development, that's where the surprises come in. Oh, wow, I didn't realize that this was an area that I need to be focusing on, because I thought I was pretty good at that. And the reality, of course, is that our gifts, our strengths, if we overuse them or use them in inappropriate situations, then become, to our detriment, our reasons for failure, our possibilities for failure. So those are areas that we need to focus on, develop more on, and make sure that those areas that we do value about ourselves are not overused and misused.
Yeah, and misused, right? Or overused, I think is a great way to say it. So you and I are both contributors according to the YOS, and we also have a 2 in our Enneagram. So the 2 is a helper giver.
Right.
Contributor is someone who wants to help at any cost, wants to make a difference, cares about people, cares about making a positive impact on the lives of others. Well, let's talk about the dark side of that. What is one of the
Absolutely.
challenges of being a helper giver that you have found throughout your career as you work with executives at different levels?
Yeah. So the power or the gift of the type 2, which is the helper or giver or considerate helper, and depending on which school you're studying the Enneagram through, is this intuition, this intuitive knowing of what other people need, and jumping in and providing that help. Now, the problem can be there are a couple of different problems with that. One is you're providing that help and it was not asked for or not wanted. And so the person feels an intrusion. You're intruding on that person. They don't want that. And they are not wanting to thank you for that or appreciate your help in that area, which is what the 2 really needs. The 2 wants to be appreciated and thanked for the help that they provided, because that feeds into their being liked. So one of the underlying motivations of the helping is that wanting to be liked or loved. So they're actually doing something, and the antithesis is happening, right? The fear is, I'm not going to be liked or loved, so I'm going to jump in, I'm going to provide this help so that the person likes me, but the person doesn't like that I did this without their permission or asking them if it's okay, and they were perfectly fine on their own, or they weren't ready to receive help. So that is overusing your strength and not reading the situation appropriately and asking for permission, like, can I help you? Do you need help? Do you want me to help? That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like you're reading my life story. Because I'm a 3 with a 2, right? So I'm a achiever with a helper wing, but that 2 is very strong. In the YOS, I also lead with contribute, as you do, Karl. One of the challenges that I've seen with people with the Y of contribute is that the tendency to overcommit, because they want to help. They
Yeah,
say yes to everything. Somebody
they
needs
do.
help, they're there, right?
Yeah.
Because, okay, again, I think it's that need or that want to be liked. So if somebody needs help, that's an opportunity for me to make a difference for
Right.
someone. But next thing I know, I'm helping 20 people and my own job is suffering. Do you see that with leaders also?
Exactly. That point about your own job is suffering is so valid for the type 2 or the contributor, the giver, the helper, because they're always outwardly looking. We're always outwardly looking to see what other people might need, and really not paying attention to what our own needs are or our own goals are. So we may have a job to do. We do have a job to do, and we have certain goals that we need to get accomplished, some milestones that need to be met. However, we're focusing too much outwardly on other people's needs and, again, wanting to be liked. So we kind of really put our stuff to the side and focus on achieving and helping other people achieve their goals. And then once those goals are achieved, we may go back to our own. And that is exactly what you were saying, Dan, saying yes to everything, overcommitting, not wanting to say no to anything, because if you say no, you're not going to be liked, you're going to ruin the relationship, you're going to harm the relationship, whatever that may be. So that is an absolute challenge for the type 2s. And it's not just the type 2s, by the way, because other types also have trouble saying no because of that same need. So, but the type 3s would have trouble saying no because they want to they want to shine, they want to be the best at. So yeah, they'll take more on in order to get more accolades. The
Yes.
sevens would take more on because they don't want to miss out. They don't want to miss out on fun things. So yeah, I'll do that and the other, and that sounds fun, and that's diverse and exciting. So it's all this stuff is going on. So different types are going to say yes to things for different reasons, but ultimately the outcome is the same. You can get overcommitted, burned out. You're going to let other people down because you can't do everything that you said that you're going to do. So it's the same outcome, but for different reasons.
Yeah. And one of the things that you talked about and that's important to know is that need for recognition. One of the
Mhm.
things that I find with clients with the why of contributor when they're a helper giver is I warn them, when you're spread thin,
Mhm.
guess what you're doing? And you talked about it when you initially talked about it. Um, the fact is, if you're doing a lot, you're not making a big difference anywhere. You're doing a lot, you're helping a little bit in a lot of places and nobody notices, which then leads to you not being recognized, which is something you need. And so
Right.
you're spreading yourself thin, you're going crazy
Mhm.
trying to help everyone, and nobody is seeing the difference you're making. And
Right.
so then you feel underappreciated, and that probably
Exactly.
has a negative impact on you as a leader. What is the impact of that on leaders or their organizations when they're spread so thin? And how do you as a coach help them overcome that?
So you're absolutely right. The impact is this superficial connection or way of helping that really doesn't resolve anything. And the answer, especially for leaders who overcommit and really take everything on themselves, is to do the antithesis, to really involve other people,
Mhm.
empower, involve, get them trained, get them the development that they need so they are empowered to do the job themselves. Actually, reprioritizing what it is that you should be doing, whatever your role is, right? What you're hired for a specific role. What should you be doing in that role? What should your priorities be? And then finding out, okay, if these are my priorities and I'm being asked to do these other things that are really not part of my goals, that are somebody else's goals, or no one should be doing this in this department, it should be really being done in a different department. How do we reprioritize, deprioritize, maybe delegate to the appropriate areas? And if people aren't ready to take on that work, even though they should be, how do we develop them so that they have that experience and expertise and ability to do that work that I shouldn't be doing as a leader or executive, team leader, whatever it is? So the other way to think about it is by doing everything yourself, you are robbing other people of the ability to learn and develop and be able to take it on themselves. And if you keep doing everything yourself, you're going to burn out. You're going to not be in that situation anymore, and nobody else is going to know how to do it. So you're creating this horrible, horrible experience for your organization as well as yourself, as well as your team members.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it because as a giver, you want to feel like you're doing something for others. So that's a great way to turn that delegation because leaders, and you know this because you work with them, Carl, and you're one yourself. Nobody can do it as well as we can, right? So that's why we don't
Or
delegate.
can they? Or
Or
can they? We've never given them the opportunity to do so, right?
And right, and then what we
Yeah.
find is that they're actually capable and probably capable of even better than we are once we give them that responsibility. So it takes stuff off your
Mhm.
plate and then allows them to develop. But I think allowing people the opportunity to develop probably resonates really well with those givers.
Yeah, and the other thing is they may not do it the way you would do it, but they may come up with a different way that may make the product or the outcome even better.
Yeah, that's something that is so good, and then that's so important. So let's get through your YOS, Carl, because I think that's so fun to look at it compared to your Enneagram profile. So your YOS is to contribute, to make sense of the complex and challenging. So your why is to contribute to the success of others, make a difference. Your how is to make sense of the complex and challenging, and your what is to build relationships based on trust. So, what we know, if I know nothing else, if I didn't know your Enneagram, I would know, hey, Carl is someone who puts other people first. He cares about building relationships, he cares about helping others and making a difference. how he's going to go about it is by helping them make sense of things that are complex and challenging. So
Yeah.
that's how he's going to go about it. He's going to make sense of it and explain it to them so that it makes sense to them. So people come to you when they're stuck. And then your what is trust, which means you like to build relationships based on trust. You're somebody
Mhm.
that people can count on. You're dependable, and you want the people around you to be dependable. How does that match up with your Enneagram profile? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because I have coaches
Mhm.
in my audience that use both of these assessments. So
Yeah.
love to hear your thoughts on it as an Enneagram expert.
It really aligns pretty well. From obviously we always start with why. Why are you the way you are? Why are you doing the things you're doing? Why do you think the way you do? And if you look at contributing is as the why, I want to contribute, I want to help. That makes total sense for the type 2. And then the making sense part, that probably aligns really well with my triadic style on the Enneagram. So in the Enneagram, we have 3 different types that align to the heart, 3 that align to the head or the thinking styles, and 3 that align to the body or the action styles. So my highest score in each of those centers, those 3 centers, is type 2 in the feeling center. And that aligns to the why, of course, for the contributing, the helping, the being liked. The thinking style that I have is type 7, which is more aligned with visionary and seeing the connections and seeing how things can work, and the opportunities that are created with that. So it's the epicure, the adventurer, the visionary. And then my action style is the mediator or peacekeeper. So what does the whole system look like? How can we keep the peace within the system? How can we make everyone happy within the system? So those really align pretty well with my triadic style. And of course, the type 2 and the type 9 are really about those relationships.
Yeah.
And that's showcased in the contributor and the trust making, and relationship building for the 9.
Yeah, I love that you said that in the YOS. When I work with teams, when somebody has contribute and trust, those are very noble whys. These are people that care about relationships. They care about people. They care about
Mhm.
helping people achieve. And so, I mean, you couldn't have said it any better. I really
Thanks.
appreciate that. And then the visionary part, right? The making sense. You talked about making the connection. So making sense is all about taking information and quickly
Mhm.
synthesizing it and finding a way to make it useful. Do
Yeah.
people come to you often, Carl, with their problems because they know you're a great problem solver?
A lot, yes. And that's great, because I mean, that's the whole point, right? If someone can't figure it out from their own perspective, based on their own experiences and their own examples that they've had in the past, it's getting insight or getting some questions from a coach or a peer or a friend or a colleague, or to try to give them new insight into the situation. So it's coaching is really where this comes in, right? So the coaches will be providing questions that help people think differently. And I think the Enneagram is a system that allows that to happen as well, because you know what your core way of thinking is, that is your core type. And then there are 8 other options to choose from, and 8 other selections. And then that expands your way of thinking about a problem or a challenge to give you more insights and ideas into how you can resolve it.
Yeah, that is really important to just take that. And like I said, your gift, it's a gift for you. It's not a gift for everyone, right? And that's the beauty, because as I read through your bio and we were looking at your background, one of the things that I think you're really good at, and one of your passions, is fostering collaboration within organizations. So helping
Mhm.
individuals and teams realize their full potential by
Right.
encouraging new mindsets and connections. And I bet you do a lot of that by showing people, hey, that's a strength of yours, not a strength of his. Maybe he does that and you do something different.
Yeah.
How much of the work you do with teams is helping them figure out, hey, where's their zone of genius? And let's work there instead of working in your zone of frustration, which is not a
Right.
place where you're really happy. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So the teamwork that I do, the work that I do with teams, is helping them understand again what their strengths are individually. And then we also, when we bring them together, that can enhance some sort of collective strength that the team has. It may enhance or amplify a certain energy or a certain type within the Enneagram. The other really important thing to consider is that we do have all 9 energies and styles according to the Enneagram. We have them within us. And some of them are more prevalent, some of them are more easily accessible, others we have to focus more on. So even if something is not our preferred or dominant energy, or a point that we go to, we can realize that by not going to that, by not really relying on the insights that that would bring to you, you're not having a full picture. So you can either go to somebody else who has that insight that they can provide more easily and readily for you, that as a complement, as a sparring partner, a thought partner, or you can think about it yourself and say, hold on a second, I know my default is to look at this through this lens. How can looking at it through maybe a wing, what's next to me, one of the other types, the points that are next to me, or another perspective from an arrow where I go to under stress or release or comfort. What do those insights provide? Or maybe even stuff that isn't necessarily next to you or that you have arrows to, that's still in the system and you still have access to. How do you focus on that in a way that is much more regimented, rather than just always relying on your default and, again, doing things the same way over and over and over again, because that's not necessarily going to be the best way.
Yeah, if you do things the way you've always done them, you're going to get the results you've always gotten, right? So that's
Exactly.
the beauty of having a coach come in, someone like yourself,
Mhm.
who's going to be really in tune with the different types and help people go into their zone of genius and spend more time there. I'm all
Yeah.
about working in my zone of genius. I don't want to work on the stuff that frustrates me. Karl, let me bring something up, because there's 9 whys also, just like there's 9 types in the
Mhm.
Enneagram. We say your top 3 are your zone of genius. I
Mhm.
like to say that. In the
Mhm.
middle, your next 3 are areas that don't take energy from you, but don't give
Mhm.
you energy. If you're working in your top 3, that's giving you energy. Your
Right.
middle 3
Exactly.
take away your energy, and your bottom 3, I mean, your middle 3 are energy neutral, and then your
Neutral.
bottom 3 are energy sucking.
Right.
If you work in that zone, you're going to
Mm.
be, especially if you start the day working in that zone, you're going to be
Yeah.
toast by about 10 o'clock in the morning. Versus me, if I'm working in my top 3 in the morning, I can work all day long and have all
Mhm.
the energy in the world. Do you have a similar scenario that you use with the top 3, middle 3, and bottom 3 with Enneagram?
So the interesting thing is that when you take an assessment, you will generally, each system is going to tell you what your top score is, what your top
Right.
type is probably going to be. And ultimately, we always want to say that no test can tell you what your type is. You have to validate that yourself through your own experience, right? Is that
Right.
the test can guide you there, it can give you a directional um, consideration.
Right.
However, it's up to you to decide, yeah, that the test got it right, or oh, that my second one, I think my second one is actually my first one, or whatever it is. So when you have an assessment that gives you the ranking order or tells you, okay, you're really, really high in these, you're really lower in these, but some people are fairly consistent across the board in all of them. So it's difficult to say which are my top 3, which are my middle 3, which are my bottom 3.
Right.
So I think each person is the best arbiter of what are my top 3, what are my middle 3, what are my bottom 3. We know what takes energy away from us. We know what drains us.
Right.
And there are times in my mood, I have to be in the right mood to do those things that are draining, and they're not draining at that point. I'm just in a different mood and I can do those and I can pay the attention to that. And it's not a drainer. It is, yeah, great. I can do this. This
Mhm.
is, it's not, I'm alone. I'm not with any other person. I'm doing stuff that is not relationship oriented or having energy of somebody else with me, but
Right.
I'm in the mood to do that. So I can do that at this point,
Yeah.
but that's not my normal. That's
Right.
not my
Right.
normal state, but it just tends to fluctuate, and we can make those decisions. We can put ourselves in those states
Yeah.
as it's what comes necessary, because sometimes we don't have a choice and we have to do those things.
No, that is so
So
true. That
mhm,
one of the things I say, and we say this with the YOS, we all have all 9, and we can go into them when we need to. So one of the
exactly.
whys is find a better way, and you could probably tell me which of these are innovators, people who take stuff that
Mhm.
exists and make it better. They're constantly looking for
Mm.
innovation. So which Enneagram type would that be like?
So ones and sevens would do that, because ones are the reformers, so making
Yeah.
it better. How do we make it better? And sevens are visionaries, so they're innovative as well.
Perfect. So let's say
Yeah.
they're a one, right?
Mhm.
They're going to make things better. And I was speaking with an attorney, so his why was better way. So he was a one, and he said, you
Mhm.
know what? I think when I was in law school, I was mastery, which is another one of the whys, which is your deep
Mhm.
learners, people that like to learn things at a deep level.
Fives. Those are
Five.
the fives.
So he says,
Mhm.
I think when I was in law school, I was a five. And my answer, and I would love to hear your thoughts. My answer to him was, well, perhaps, but I think what you did is you leaned into your mastery because in law school, you got to
Mhm.
learn stuff at a deep
Yeah.
level and then be able to
Mhm.
regurgitate it. So during that time, you leaned into your five because you
Yeah.
needed to. And then because, hey, guess what? Leaning into your five was a better way to get through law school, right?
Of
That's
course.
that's
Yeah.
the best way. So you're a better way person. You like to innovate,
Mhm.
and your innovative mindset. Hey, I need to lean into that mastery part of my brain, and
Yeah.
you leaned into it because you needed to at that time.
Right.
And like you said, you probably had tons of energy for it because it was a better way to get through law school,
Right.
right?
And from an Enneagram perspective, if those truly are aligned to 5 and 1, 5 is a thinking style. So this
Mhm.
is the way you think and process and work through things. And 1 is an action style. So
Ah,
the 5 gets you through law school, and the 1 gets you to be a lawyer, right? Your action is now I'm a lawyer, an attorney, and I'm getting things done through this process by doing the right thing and focusing on reforming and making things better.
excellent. That makes a ton of sense. Hey, I'm putting something up on the screen here. This is a book that you wrote, and I want to make
Mhm.
sure we're going to talk about your latest book. But this looks like Nina and the Really Really Tough Decision. Tell us about this book a little bit. It looks like it's written for children, but it says
It
for
is.
children and adults alike. So I like it when
Yeah.
people make things simple and easy to understand, like you've done in this case. Tell us about Nina and the Really Really Tough Decision. What led you to write it? Because it's about
Yeah.
explaining the Enneagram to younger folks, right?
Yes. Yes, it is. And I was going to be provocative and say, aren't we all still children, right? It's
Oh, we
children
are
at heart, and we
for
still
sure.
carry we still carry our childhoods with us, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
So after I wrote the first book, which was a business book, and I got older and I started saying, wow, this all of this would have been so much easier if I'd known about the Enneagram and all these differences in people when I was much younger, because then I wouldn't have gone through all the different problems and challenges and mistakes that I made. I would have been far more educated and aware of the differences in people's ways of thinking and perceiving and viewing the world and acting in the world, and realize that it's all good. It's all that's what makes the world. So I figured, wouldn't it be great to create a children's book where children are taught about this diversity of perspective, or here in this case, decision making. So
Mhm.
how we look at the world and how we make decisions, and realize that that's a fairly innocuous way of doing that. And I don't want to give away the ending, but it's pretty you can probably figure it out. How can we integrate all 9 of those perspectives into our own preferred mode to really get a better understanding of the world and a better understanding of every single situation? So that's where the children's book came from. And of course, if children can learn that early on in life, that's a huge win. And if adults are reading the book to the children, they're also learning that story as well, or that moral as well.
Yeah, and I like that you say it's through the lens of decision making for children and adults alike. So
Yeah.
love that you included that because you know what? Sometimes we don't have to make life so difficult, right? So you wrote
Yeah.
a really really tough book. Your first book was a very very business oriented book.
Very
It's called
esoteric. Yeah.
yeah, taking care of business with the Enneagram. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
hey, let's take care of business. But then you came to a
But it's
realization,
but
hey,
it's also taking care of business. So it's taking
ah,
care of business is like, let's get things done, but
right.
it's taking care of business. So we're caring for the business. So that's the how part of it, the emotional intelligence part of it, and understanding and about all the diversity of it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a double entendre.
No, I like that, I love playing with words. As my number two why is to challenge the status quo. I'm that creative. That's probably I think it's a 7, right? And you and I share
Mhm.
that. So one of the things that you talk about is taking care. I had Renee Smith on the podcast, and she talks about introducing love in the workplace and
Mhm.
leading from a place of love.
Yep.
I think, I believe, and you probably agree with her. There's nothing wrong with introducing love into the workplace because
No.
loving people is wanting the best for them. and
Right.
understanding their decision-making process, understanding their
Mhm.
priorities, understanding what drives people to do what they do probably allows you to love people in a way that's professional. We're not talking about, hey, we're going to
Right.
fall in love, go out and get married. It's about loving your team
Mhm.
enough to use them in the place where they can make the most positive impact for the
Right.
organization.
I think that's very true and very valid, and I think empathy is really a form of that love, right? The other thing that I think has been a major obstacle for people to use that concept is our reliance on the golden rule. Everyone talks about the golden rule all the time. And I think especially in Western civilization, and especially in the United States, we're still thinking about ourselves. We really think
Mhm.
about ourselves, and the golden rule has taught us to think about ourselves, because the golden rule is do unto others as you'd have done unto you, right? So it's, oh, how do I like things? How do I want things to be? I should do unto others the way that I would want them to do unto me, the way I think.
Right.
And the reality is that's not true. It doesn't apply to all cases, because it really has an implication that everyone is exactly the same. Everyone
Mhm.
has the same history, the same likes, the same dislikes, the same allergies, the same illnesses, the same ailments, the same um, political views, the same ideologies, the same religions. And we know that that's not true. So,
Right.
how can we expand our own way of thinking and find out exactly what you're saying earlier? Oh, let's empathize, let's love the other person. And by loving them, we find out more about them and their perspective, have a relationship with them, see how they look at the world. And then the third step, of course, is how much of that can I now integrate into my own worldview and expand my worldview so that I have a real view of what's going on, as opposed to just this myopic version of what I thought is going on based on, again, what I was taught as a child, through society, through the circles that I'm in, through the school that I was in, through whatever it was that led to this ideology that I have.
That makes so much sense. One of the things we talk about in my coaching, and I won't claim this came from the Y Institute. We call it the platinum rule, because the
Yeah,
golden rule
that
says
is the
do unto
platinum.
others as you would
Yeah,
have them do unto you. The platinum rule says do unto others as they would have
they'd
done
have
unto
done unto them.
themselves. So when we understand them, we treat them in the way they want to be treated, not the way we want to be treated, because
Exactly.
not everybody's like us, right?
Exactly. And then the third part of that is the rhodium rule. So
Okay.
rhodium is an even more expensive version of platinum, and that is, how do I integrate that new learning and insight into my own,
Oh,
right? So
that's
that's, and
fantastic.
again, that really aligns with Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is, first part is self-awareness. So that's golden rule. How do I
Mhm.
like things done? Great, now I get
Right.
it. Then empathy is the second part of Daniel Goleman's emotional intelligence. That's platinum rule.
Right.
How do they like things, right? How do other people like things?
Right.
And then the third part of Daniel Goldman's emotional intelligence is, well, what are you going to do about it? How do you work with this? How do you integrate this? How do you act? And that's the rhodium rule then aligns with that, saying, okay, how do I integrate that and build that into my own worldview now?
Hey, for
So
those
it's
of us who
expanded.
aren't familiar with those precious metals, how do you spell rhodium? Do you know that? I don't want to put you on the
RH.
spot.
So it's almost like my name, right? Because I have an R at the beginning of my name. So we could
Right.
say that the R in my name is rhodium. It's not really rhodium, but RHODIUM.
All right. My middle school spelling bee champion is still there. I had spelled it that way,
I
so
did
good.
too, by the way. Fourth grade spelling bee champion.
Yeah,
That's
fantastic. My
another
daughters,
another.
both of my daughters were spelling bee champs. It's something, something about having Spanish as my first language allowed
Mhm,
me to spell things phonetically real easy. So
mhm.
hard words like rhodium, I would just say it in Spanish and Excel. There's an H, and that's the only thing I have to remember. And then it's spelled just the way it sounds. That's a beautiful
Yep,
thing about phonics, right?
exactly.
Oh, that's good stuff. Well, there you go. We found something else. Besides, we have very similar Enneagram profiles, very similar YOS styles. We also have an affinity for spelling, which is, hey, let's
Exactly.
talk. I'm gonna present this. I'm gonna share this on the screen. Let's talk about your third book, because I think we've kind of done a really cool evolution of Karl, where you went real deep, and then you went, hey, let's get it to the kiddos. But now your third book is Explicit Expectations, the essential
Yeah.
guide and toolkit of management fundamentals. And this is the other cool thing about Karl, and this is for the audience. This is what a modest guy. You notice there's a Ph.D. after his name, but he doesn't go by Dr. Karl or Dr. Hebenstreit. Very modest guy. But tell us about this book, Explicit Expectations. What we've gotten the hey, let's take care of business, and then we got the kid version. What's different? What are we going to get that's different in Explicit Expectations that we haven't gotten in your first two books?
So believe it or not, the Enneagram is still embedded in Explicit Expectations, and it really is based on the premise that we can't read people's minds. We don't know. We cannot read people's minds. We don't know what they want from us or they expect from us. And again, golden rule wise, we're thinking, oh, this is what I think they want because this is what I would want from my boss or my leader in this situation. So this is what I'm going to do, how I'm going to behave, how I'm going to act. But this book was born out of a need of, we have so many people, especially in startup organizations, but even in larger organizations, where you are rewarded for your strength, whatever your strength is. As an individual contributor, you're doing really, really well. You're performing really well. You're achieving great results. You get promoted. And now, there's no next step for you except to be a leader or a manager of other people. And we know you're going to do well doing that because you've done so well mastering your areas of competence. Well, guess what? Your area of competence may not be managing other people, but it's just an assumption that now that's the next step and you'll be able to do it. And I just saw a statistic that I think it was 65 or 70% of people are put into new roles, into leadership roles or management roles of other people without any preparation, without any development, without any training or any support or resources. Well, a company came to me about a year and a half ago or so and recognized that this was a need that they had. It was a startup company. And they said, can you create a toolkit so that all of our leaders could have a reference guide to go to when they have to do all these different things? And that way it's going to be a common language, a common toolkit. They're going to use the same type of models and systems and tools to be able to address the issues, and we'll have consistency in the way that we're treating our employees, and people will have some sort of resource and support. So I did that project for them, and it was more limited in scope than what I would have done because that's all they wanted certain areas addressed. And I'm like, well, I would really expand that and include these other things as well. So I wrote the book about these are the different things that your company and your direct reports are going to expect for you to be able to do well, even though no one's told you this. No one has told you this. There's no place that you can go to that tells you this is what you're going to have to do and how to do it. So that's where Explicit Expectations came in what are the explicit expectations of your direct reports, your team members? What are your explicit expectations of them? Do they even know what you're expecting them? And looking up, what is your manager? What is your boss or your leader? What are they expecting of you? And how are you expecting to work with them for what expectations you have of them to support you? So we are not very explicit about these expectations that we have implicitly in us because we're looking at it from golden rule, our perspective, our needs. Mm-hmm. And wouldn't it be great and make life a lot easier and help us get our results much better and have better working relationships with everyone if we were very explicit about what we expected from each other, especially if things go wrong, which they will. When they go wrong, how do we get back on track without people's feelings being hurt, without feeling misrepresented or misunderstood, or that they were set up for failure or anything like that? It's basically asking for what we need and saying what we expect. And the worst thing can happen is say, we can't do that, or we can't do that this way, but this is how we can do it. And then being on the same level and in the same understanding of what can be done.
Karl, you just hit on something that's so important. And Bruce Dayton, if you're listening, he was my the gentleman at when I was an individual contributor at Baxter as a salesman, and he saw potential in me, and he recommended me for a promotion to a manager position. And it's so funny that you brought it up because I remember telling Bruce, "Hey, Bruce, I haven't won the President's Club, which is the top sales award." And he said, "You think I'm ready to be a manager?" He said, "Dan, I'm not promoting you because you're a good salesman. I'm promoting you because you're a good leader."
Yeah.
And he says, and I did so much better as a leader than I did as a sales. I was a good salesman, good
Mhm.
enough, right?
Right.
I was meeting my quota, exceeding my quota, but I wasn't the top salesman in the company. He says,
Mhm.
it's not often the top salesman that's going to be the top manager.
That
You've
is
got to look at
fantastic
different things. So
insight.
leaders,
Yes.
listen to Karl here. You're looking when you're looking for a leader, it's not always your best individual contributor, but we do that across industries. Your best salesman becomes your sales
Mhm.
leader. Your best accountant leads the accounting
Yeah.
team. Your best software developer becomes the leader of the software
Mhm.
development team. And sometimes they may be. Right? It could be,
Yeah.
and that's where assessments probably become really handy to look at.
Mhm.
Okay, what are their strengths? Because sometimes you push somebody into a leadership position and they don't want to say no because it's a promotion, it's a
Right.
title, it's more money. So why would they say no? But it may not be what they want to do. They may be perfectly happy continuing to be an individual
Yeah.
contributor and contributing much more to your bottom line, because if they're an outstanding
Yeah.
sales, you can't replace an outstanding salesman. You can't replace an outstanding coder or programmer that easily. If they're really
Right.
good at it, let's leave them. Let's let them do what they do really well. We can always give them a raise and
Mhm.
maybe a different title, but let's not put them in charge of people unless that's a skill that they have. How often do you see
Or that
that,
they
Karl?
want, or that they want. I
Ah,
see that a lot because many times, especially with succession plans or even career conversations, a couple things can happen. Either, again, golden rule, a leader goes in there and says, "Oh, I see this person. This is what I would want in that person's wherever they are in their career. Therefore, their next level, they're going to want the same thing because this is how I did and how I progressed in my career. So therefore, I think that they're doing really, really well. They're going to be a great director or vice president, whatever it is. So I'm going to put them on the succession plan without ever having the conversation with them to see if they aspire for that." The flip side is people know that the only way to advance in an organization is to say that they want to be a leader because they don't have any tracks where they can get more money or whatever they're trying to achieve, right? If they
right,
think the only way to get more money is to become a leader, to go into a management role,
right.
they don't want to manage people, they just want more money. So great. If that's the case, how do we make an individual contributor track that gives more money, that could be on the same par and the same bandwidth as salary bandwidth as a manager or people
Right.
manager,
Yeah.
without having this colossal failure of having this leader go in there that doesn't want to lead, that doesn't care about people, just wants more money, and then disenchants and disengages a whole bunch of people who then leave, and then you have this other bigger problem and challenge to meet.
Yeah.
So it's whoever you do put in there, make sure that the career conversation has been had about what are their real aspirations, because I've seen in in several many jobs ago, where I was working with high potentials. We used that word in the past. I think it's making a resurgence now, which it shouldn't, but it is. Um, it it was a husband and wife, and they were both. I'll just say they were both in Colorado, and headquarters for the organization was in California, but they knew that the only way that they could succeed and grow in the organization is if they said that they were mobile and that they were relocatable. One of them said, "Yes, I am mobile and relocatable." And the other one said, "No, I'm not mobile or relocatable."
Don't
So
even
you're
think
like,
about it.
Did you talk to each other about this?" And they were
Yeah.
both working for the same company, right? In different disciplines and organizations. So it wasn't a reporting structure that was compromised there or anything like that. But it was really fascinating to say, okay, so I guess you're just planning on living in separate states if this happens, right? If one of you gets
Wow.
a promotion and the other one doesn't, or leaving the organization. So no conversation was had that was really to figure out like what's going on here. And if you really do want to get promoted, um, do you want to be focusing more regionally or more where you are, or do you really want to move? What's
Yeah.
going on here? What's more important here? What are the values? So those conversations, finding the truth in the person's aspirations
Right.
needs to happen, because most of the time they don't,
And
and decisions
Carl,
are made without even talking to the person.
in that story you just told, I mean, managers and leaders, by all means, please buy Karl's book before you make a decision, because let's look at the impact. Right, you promote somebody without having, and I think the key is the conversations. You've got to have those
Mhm.
conversations, and you've
Exactly.
got to know what people are looking for. So use an assessment like the Enneagram that Carl's, use the YOS, Colby, Strengths Finders, use something and have a professional like Karl come and help you interpret the results, because then you're going to know how to talk to that person.
Yeah.
I love that rhodium rule, right? Because think about the impact to the business. You take your, let's use sales, since I came from a sales background. You take your best salesman and you promote them into a leadership role that they don't want, that they're not looking for. What they want is more money and they want the prestige. So they're looking for a promotion, but you could promote them to senior sales representative or executive sales representative, whatever it takes, so that they can get that additional money. But don't put them in charge of a group, because when you put them in charge, they don't know how to lead. Like you said, 60 to 70% of people get put into a leadership role without any preparation whatsoever. What are they going to do? They're going to say, well, do it the way I do it, because they haven't had any training. And guess what? They upset, and now you lose. Now you've lost your number 2, 3, and 4 salespeople, because they left, because they don't want to be managed by somebody that doesn't know how to manage or lead. And now and this high potential guy, your number 1 guy, you're going to fire him because he was a terrible manager. So now you've lost 4 really talented people, and you're starting
4
over.
more.
And right, because other people will leave when that guy leaves, and now you've got a mess in your sales department, and one of your highest performing regions is now one of your lowest performing regions, all because you didn't have that original important conversation, right? And you didn't talk to him using the golden, platinum, or rhodium. I mean, just talk to him, right? What would you say? Yeah. Really love how you highlighted that, Karl, because that we see that so often. As coaches, that's obviously where the gold is for us. We want to go in and help undo that situation. But if we could, I think we'd rather prevent it.
Yeah. Well, that's why, we always say that we're always going to have jobs. We're always going to be in demand, because people always default to the golden rule. We have all these systems in place that really default us to the golden rule. And we have to fight against that tendency to really expand our thinking and grow our emotional intelligence. And
Man, Karl, it's been so cool to talk to you. What's a parting word? What's something you would want to say to a new leader? So let's say you're somebody that's promoting a leader into a position, or to someone who is getting promoted into a leadership position, and they feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready. I have no idea how I'm going to do this. What advice would you give to that new leader?
Well, going back to our theme about talking, it's really having that conversation with the person that is putting their faith in you, right? If you're being promoted and there's a leader that's doing that, advocating for you, and you're going to be reporting into them, and really making sure that all of your expectations are set out there and explicit along with theirs. There are some really great tools in this book that can help you have that conversation. There's a whole engagement and alignment guide at the end that actually has questions that you can ask, and you can not only once, but even a month later, or a quarter later, or 6 months later, or a year later, review them, because things can change. So being very, very clear on what the goals and expectations are of you, knowing what support is available to you, how can you be ready, how often can you meet, how often can you communicate, how do you communicate with them when there's a challenge or an obstacle, a roadblock that you need to overcome that neither of you have forecasted. Just making sure that those lines of communication are open, and that the trust is there, and that you both want the same thing. You both want success out of this. You're being put into this role, and really to figure out exactly how to be successful, not alone, but by engaging. And this is true for every type, engaging your entire team and not thinking that it's all on you.
That is a great way. And the book is called Explicit Expectations. Thank you for holding it up. But for those of you that hadn't seen it, it's on the screen right now. I'm assuming it's available on Amazon, because that's where I found it. So if you're looking for this book, I think that is so key, Karl. Let's look at those explicit expectations. Get that person, get your manager on the phone. And I think you set those explicit expectations by having a conversation. The conversations are truly, truly important.
And if you do want to get the book through a bookstore, it is available through bookstores as well, not just Amazon.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Karl. I've gotten so much value out of our time together. What do you say we end the show on that note?
Why not?
You're right on cue. Thank you so much, Karl. Guys, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you, share the talent and wisdom of our guest, Karl Hebenstreit, with you today. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. In the meantime, don't forget, if you lead the way everybody else does, you're going to get the results that everybody else gets. So just go out there and lead different. Don't be afraid to set your own path. Thank you, Karl, for being on the show, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks, everyone.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.